Hi everybody, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today we're going to be having a quick show and tell of my newest Island Batik Ambassador project, and then we're going to make something really fun with some of the leftover fabric and a baseball cap. So stay tuned. Before we get into the hat project, I do want to show you my quilt for May. This is my May Island Batik Ambassador project. Island Batik Ambassadors get 2 boxes of fabric every year, one in January, one in July. And in those boxes are all kinds of fabrics, including 2 bundles for blog hops. We have a blog hop in February, and then again in May, and then again in August, and then again in November. So this is my project. The only parameter we had for this month was to do a New York Beauty quilt. And I was a little nervous because I've never done one before. But the fabric I got, I was so excited when I opened that surprise package. If you watched my unboxing video in January, you would have seen 2 big bundles. And this was the second one that was wrapped up in a surprise, and I couldn't show you until now. Boy, is it gorgeous. It's called Tranquility. It's designed by Deb Tucker of Studio 180 Designs. The most glorious earth tones and patterns and really organic shapes. I was really excited to get this fabric. Again, not a color palette I always work with, but one of the things I love about being an ambassador is they send us the fabrics and it really challenges you, and this was just so much fun to use. Immediately when I saw it, and I'm going to show you some close-ups here in a little bit, it reminded me of a trip my family took last summer to Joshua Tree out in California, Joshua Tree National Park. The colors just looked so much like that desert, and I could just see all these organic shapes coming through. Now the issue here was we were challenged to do a New York Beauty quilt, so the two sort of the natural shapes don't really configure with New York Beauty, the traditional New York Beauty. But I thought, I looked at the block, I was trying to figure out what block to use, and I thought, you know what, it almost looks Art Deco-ish. So this is called Joshua Tree in the 1920s. I didn't know what else to name it. I'm really loving this fabric line. I'm really loving my quilt. I was really happy with the way it turned out. Again, it's the first time I've ever done a New York Beauty. So I looked at a couple books and I looked online, and I settled on a pattern, a paper piece pattern by Teresa Down Under. I bought it over on her Etsy shop. It was really easy to do. She has a great video tutorial, so it just was perfect for what I needed. I used Island Batik's neutral, it's called Meringue, for the background. Everything else is the 20 different fabrics in this fabric line. Tranquility, designed by Deb Tucker. Just gorgeous fabrics, and I'll show them to you up close. I also want to thank Hobbs batting. I used their poly down batting for this quilt, so I wanted to give it a little bit more dimension, especially when it was quilted. It was professionally quilted by, long arm quilted by Melinda Kepler of Scotty Bell Designs, and she did a great job for me. I really appreciate that. I used Aurifil thread to piece everything, and of course I used Schmetz Needles in my machine. So thank you so much to Hobbs Batting, Aurifil Thread, and Schmetz Needles for their support of the Island Batik Ambassador project. And of course, thank you to Island Batik. This quilt is definitely a keeper. It is going up. I have an accent wall where I hang quilts, and this will be up for a long time. Luckily, the colors also match a lot of my decor in my house. It fits perfectly, and it was so much fun when my daughter came home from college for the summer. She doesn't see a lot of my work, of course, because she's gone during the winter months, and she said, "Wow, Mom, that looks really cool." So that's the greatest compliment you can get, is from your teenage daughter that they like your quilt. So it is staying, and it's going to be hanging on that wall. And so now I'm going to change the camera around, and we're going to work on this fun project that I came up with just to use up some of the scraps of this gorgeous fabric. So every month with my Island Batik project, I like to do a little bonus project. I don't get to it every month, but I try to. Well, this month I was so inspired by that gorgeous fabric that I thought it'd be really fun to put some mini quilt blocks onto a baseball cap. Really show off your quilting pride that way. We're going to make 3 mini quilt blocks today. We're making the Friendship Star, the Bear's Paw, and the Churn Dash. And I'm going to get started in a minute. These are all just little 3-inch blocks. They're very easy to make. There's a couple little tricky steps, but I'll show you how to get through those as well. I did want to show you really quickly one more time this gorgeous fabric, and I'll show a picture up on the screen. It just is so earthy and so just such pretty soft tones. So it just is inspiring. And I still have more fabric, so I'm trying to think what else I want to make with it. I'm going to have to make maybe a little mini quilt or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually adjust the camera so you can actually see what I'm working on. And then we're going to get set to make these 3 blocks. And first off, I'm going to show you how to make the half square triangle. When I do that, that's going to be the same process for all 3 blocks. So I'm only going to show you that one time right at the beginning, and then the rest of it is just making sure you have the right cut pieces, and then I will show you how to put it on our ball cap. So I've set the baseball cap aside, and now we're going to start on the first block. But before I start that, which we're going to do the bear's paw first. Before I start that, though, I want to show you how to make those half square triangles. And again, I'm doing this one time at the beginning because this is going to be the same process for each of these 3 blocks. For each of these 3 blocks, you're going to be using the same size squares, and those are the 2 1/4 inch squares, because you need to end up with 1.5 inch half square triangles. So I'm going to show you how to do one, and then just remember that for the next blocks, because I'm going to go ahead and pre-make them. That goes a lot quicker. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to place them right, one of the darker, one color and then the other color fabrics, and you're going to place them on top of each other, line them up right sides facing. And then you're going to get a marking tool, and I'm going to mark this one very darkly because sometimes the white or this real pale fabric doesn't show up real well. Normally I would never mark these that darkly, but that way hopefully you can see it. You're going to line those up, and then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch down each side alongside that drawn line. So a 1/4 inch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to sew down this side and then on this side. And I'm going to do that, and I'll show you what they end up looking like. Okay, so now you can see that I have sewn down each side of that drawn line, just a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and now we're going to take our ruler, line it up now on the drawn line, and we are just going to split this block in half. I have a new rotary cutter. It's nice. It's one of those safety secure ones. So you've split that in half now. So now you have the 2 half square triangles. They're going to look like this, but you know what? They're not quite the right size. The way I do it, I like to have some wiggle room. I've mentioned before I have some issues with one of my hands, and so I like to have wiggle room with my half square triangles. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press it open. Alright, so here is my pressed half square triangle ready to be trimmed, and that's the last step we have to make in this one before we put the block together. And again, one more reminder, this is the same process for the rest of the half square triangles for all of the blocks. Now I want a 1.5 inch square half square triangle, and you're going to take a square ruler. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend it, especially one with a diagonal line. It's a for quilters, I really love this. It's just such a handy tool. And you're going to go really close to this edge, as close as you can, and just square off that side, making sure to line up that diagonal line with the diagonal seam right there. And I think that's good. And then you're going to take your rotary cutter and trim it off, and then you have a nice sharp point to start with to line it up with and make sure your size is right. So again, we want 1.5 inches. So on your ruler, you're going to come here to 1.5 inches, follow the line down to where it hits that diagonal line, and line it up. Put that diagonal, sort of that point right there where it hits the diagonal line, that 1.5 inch mark. Line it up along here, and then along that diagonal seam. And I've said this before, it's tricky when you're doing a video because I have to look at it from the side, so sometimes it's not always easy to see. And then you push down, and there you have it. There's your perfect 1.5 inch half square triangle. Now I've already cut the other ones because I didn't want to waste your time while I was doing all of that, and now we are ready to put together the bear's paw block. So here are the fabrics that we have. We're going to lay this out like so. Here's what the block looks like. Love a bear's paw block. It's so cute. It is like a bear's paw. We had a bear once on our deck at night. Thankfully, we didn't see it, but we saw his paws, his or hers, and they were pretty big. I put my hand next to him. It was kind of daunting. I was like, I'm sort of glad we didn't see that. But anyway, so there's your bear's paw block. You need this one square like this. And again, all the measurements were up on the screen. And you can get all of this information on my blog as well. You can always print it out there. And you're just going to put his little claws here like this. It's going to look like that. That's sort of, I consider that my background fabric. And then we're going to sew these together. And to do that, we're first going to sew together. And you got to sew them in the right way, because it is, you want those claws sort of pointing that way. So you're going to sew these two together, right sides facing, and just sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down there, and then you're going to sew these two together, making sure to stay, keep that right direction. All right, so here they are. Here I'm going to set them up like this. This is one section. You can see how the direction matters in these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this unit to this and this one to this side, and then we're going to piece the block together. And I did press these nice and sharp too. I wanted to get that nice pressed look. So I'm going to do this now, and then we're ready to finally finish the block. Alrighty, so here they are, almost done now. Now, if you watch my videos, you know I'm notorious for not pinning, but when I'm doing this one, I will pin, because this is a tricky little point right here, and the last thing you're going to do is sew these together. So you're going to place them right sides together and just line them up. Let me show you that really quickly. I press towards this fabric here, and then I press towards this. That's going to let me nest really nicely and get a nice crisp seam. Hopefully it looks good. And I'm just going to pin right there and continuing that 1/4 inch. You always want to keep the same seam allowance all the time, right along there, so that seam right along there, 1/4 inch seam. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my lovely little mini bear's paw. I think it's such a cute little block. 3 inches. Well, it's actually 3.5 right now. When it's finished, it's 3 inches. But I'm going to show you how we finish it later. But there's my bear's paw. There's the one I'm going to put on my cap later. And now we are on to, why don't we do the Churn Dash next? Alright, so here's my mini Churn Dash. Again, another 3 inch block. These are all 3 inches, and I have already pre-made all my half square triangles, and this is the center. And the only thing that we still need to do with this one, well, sew it all together, is I have these 2 strips. Don't forget the measurements at the beginning of each section, so that'll help you out. But these 2 strips, they're 1 inch wide. I place them right sides together, and then I'm going to sew along one long edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold it open, and then we're going to cut it into 1.5 inch squares. I'll show you how I do that, but first I'm going to sew that down. Alright, so there is my pressed piece. I'm going to put this aside a little bit. There's my pressed piece. It should measure 1.5 inches wide with those 2 strips, and I'm just going to check it really quickly, and it does. And now we're going to cut 1.5 inch squares. So I need to find my ruler. Alright, here it is. We're just going to line it up on that side. It's nice and even right there. You might want to even up if you need to, but if you don't, no worries. Just going to line it up here and then on that bottom line. And again, you need 1.5 inch squares, and you need 4 of them. Alright, so you can see I actually gave you a little bit of wiggle room here. There's a little bit extra, no biggie. Just again, because sometimes you slip when you're cutting these. So I just do a quick double check, and they are 1.5 inches. And now that's it. We are ready to put this block together. So we lay it out. I'm going to move this one aside. This is your center. And then you're going to put, I think I want the green as my sort of, I guess that's the Churn Dash. You could rotate it if you want, whatever you want. There we go. like so. I always like to lay out my blocks before I sew them. That way I know what I'm doing and make sure I'm sewing them together right. Some people just whip them together. I envy that because I'm very much a visual learner, so I like to see things when I'm doing when I'm making them. So that's what it's going to look like. And the first thing you're going to do is sew together these individual rows. And what I'm going to do first is this the left side of each block. And I'm going to sew those together, again, still putting the right sides together and lining them up and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, so you can see it coming together, and the next thing we're going to do is I just finger press these. I'm going to press them in the ironing surface after I've done each row. You're going to add this last piece to this row. Again, right sides together, same thing, and you're going to do that right down the line. Alright, here it's coming together. We just have one more step to go, and that is sewing the 3 rows together. These top and bottom rows I press to the outside or towards the triangles, and this center one I press towards that center square. Makes it good for nesting. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will definitely pin at those seams where they meet so we don't have any problems. And I will do that, and then you will see the finished Churn Dash, mini Churn Dash block. Alrighty, here's my little mini Churn Dash. Is that not the cutest block? I'm in love with the mini Churn Dash. I think that might be my favorite. Again, it'll measure 3.5 inches, 3 inches when finished. Here's a finished one. I used fabrics that blend in a little bit more. I'm really loving this one. It's just a sort of cute little block. That's the Churn Dash. So last but not least is the Friendship Star, and we will get started on that. Alright, so here's my Friendship Star block for the hat, although I might change it. If you notice, I did a mistake when I was sewing this one together. I put these as sort of the star part, these little, right in here, these triangles, and it should have been the purple ones. When I do a video, I also do a blog post, and so I did some step-by-step photos. So this one turned out better. You can see this one's right. You can really see that star shape in this one. This one unfortunately gets lost, but I've already folded this one, and I'll show you how to do that later. But this is your mini Friendship Star, and we're going to make that next. So yet again, those half square triangles we're going to need. This is another very easy block to make. These are all so easy, and they just make such cute blocks. So this is the center. These are all these little 1.5 inch squares. These are your corners. And here's some more 1.5 inch half square triangles. There we go. And you make these again the same way you did that first section. I wanted to make it easier for you. I have chapters in the description as well, so that can, if you want to go reference back to that, you can. It'll tell you what time I went over that. Like the Churn Dash, you're just going to do these. This has one less step because you don't have that middle sort of stripe part, that little right in here. All we're going to do, we're going to piece this together, this together, this together, then this one. We're going to make the rows again, and then sew the rows together. Alrighty, so here we go, almost done, and then we can finally get to making that hat. This is exciting. So that's what it's going to look like, and now we're just going to sew those rows together. I pressed these 2 top and bottom out to the outside and this one into the inside so I could get that good nesting and that nice seam. Alrighty, here's my little mini Friendship Star. How cute. I'm loving these little minis. You don't have to put these on a hat. You can make just a little mini scrappy, maybe a sampler. Wouldn't that be fun? But this is what this looks like. 3 inches unfinished, 3 inches finished. And now we're going to put these to good use. And I'm going to pull over these ones I've already prepared and my hat. So on these 3, you can see where they're folded over. Let me just show you this Churn Dash here, how much bigger it is. You can see I've already done this. I went ahead and very carefully fold it over a 1/4 inch. It's a little tricky to do. I should say it's a lot tricky, especially with all those seams. But you want to press it really well. You can even use starch if you want, and try and get it as square as possible. That's about as good as I got it. It's not perfect, because what you're going to do now, you can do this 2 ways. You can glue this down. I do have some fabric glue. Let me go get that. You can fold it over and then glue it down with some really good fabric glue, or you can just press it like I did. Word of warning, and I did this myself, if you steam, I'm a steamer when I press things, don't use steam, and watch your fingers. In fact, use a stiletto. Don't get your fingers anywhere near, because these are such small blocks that your finger's right next to the iron and you could burn it, and I sort of did this morning. So that is word of caution. Be very careful when you're pressing these. In fact, you may just want to go ahead and finger press it and then use fabric glue. That's my safety tip for you. But you're going to do that on all 3 blocks, and I've done that here already. These 2 came out nice. It was this Churn Dash that gave me the biggest problem. So you can see they look pretty funny. They don't look real great. And then you're going to get your hat. My glue is already spilling out. Unbelievable. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. Let me move this away a little bit. What you're going to do is you're going to start placing them on. Let me see. I might have to move the camera out a little bit. Let me adjust the camera a little bit. Okay, so here we are back with the camera adjusted just a little bit. So you're going to determine where you want all these blocks. This is a really tricky part, is going to be sewing these on. So what I do is I pin a lot. You determine where you want to place it. I have 1 on each side, and I'm going to put 1 on the front. And just as much as you can, because you have that hat bill, hopefully you can see that okay. You're just going to flatten that out just so it's nice and flat. And you already have those sides. Now you're going to have to watch out, because you know most hats have that sort of rim around them. You're going to pull that out when you're sewing. You have to be a little careful here. It is definitely a lot of manipulating. And we're going to take that over the sewing machine, and you're just going to sew like 1/8 of an inch in. Just do some top stitching right around the whole block to keep it secure down. Again, watching out for that part and trying not to wrinkle it up. It is tricky sewing, I'm not going to lie. Alrighty, so here is one side. I did miss that corner just a little bit. I may pull some of those stitches out and re-sew that corner, or I may just stick it down with fabric glue. That's what's nice. You don't have to sew around this. It is tricky sewing. There's a lot of manipulating. Here's what it looks like on the inside. And then I'm going to do the other block. I will try, let's see, what do we want to put on this side? I might do the Churn Dash on this side. And you try to do them so they're equal. Trying to think what'll look best on camera. Let's see, maybe this will look okay. You know, try and do about the same. I used that line that's on the hat to sort of center the block a little bit, and then I'm just going to sort of eyeball it. They don't, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's just the way I am. and it's a hat, so you won't see it on, and nobody's going to be comparing it on your hair, on your head. Well, hopefully not. They won't be, you know, comparing it on each side on your head, unless it's like way off, but this won't be way off. So there I am, pinning it, making sure it's all down. Just a fun project, a great way, a great scrap buster. It's really, and if you're going to a quilt show or something, wouldn't this be cute to wear? Or if you just like showing off that you're a quilter, you know people are going to ask you about this hat. So now I'm going to go ahead and sew this one around, and I think I am going to fix that little corner before I go on this side, just because it's really going to bug me. right, so here we are. Here's two of them so far. There's the first one, which I fixed now, the corners, and then this one. This one's a little more forgiving. I don't know. This one was harder to sew on just because of the corners and everything. So you can leave it like this if you just want to, but of course I want that big bear's paw right on the front. I think that'll be really cute. Right there on the front. And this one's easier only in that you can line it up on that line with the, since it's on, I'm going to put it on the diagonal. And we are going to sew. It's going to show up. It won't be a perfect, you know, it'll look a little funny when you put it on your head. But now I'm going to pin again. This one is the tricky one because you have the bill there. So you're really going to have to do a lot of manipulating on this one. Okay, so you can see where I've pinned this a lot, and this took a little while. You want to make sure it's nice and flat along here, and then this the cap fabric is nice and flat. It's not bunching or anything. And then we're going to just very carefully and very slowly sew around the edge again, about 1/8 of an inch in. And this one I'm going to go real slow on because I really want to watch the bill. I may start up here and just try to do that first, the hardest part first. All right, there it is. The corner, I will say that corner is pretty tough to do, but I did it. It's probably not a good project for a beginner. I'm just going to trim these little threads away. It's just a lot of fun, a great scrap buster if you have an old ball cap. This is actually a new ball cap. Got some fuzz on it underneath here. I'm going to now model it for you. I'm not a great model, but that way you can see the whole thing. And I'm going to show you the quilt one more time. All right, so here I am showing off my new hat. I am ready to hit the quilt shows and anything else, get out of the sun a little bit. It's just a fun way to show off your individuality and your style. And it's easy too, although I will say the sewing was a little tricky. So if you don't want to do that, just easily get some good fabric glue and just glue the blocks down. Did want to show you one more time my quilt. This is my, it's Joshua Tree in the 1920s. It's my New York Beauty quilt for my June Island Batik project. I used their new fabric line called Tranquility. It was designed by Deb Tucker of Studio 180 Designs. It is available in stores now, and I highly urge you to take a look at it. Just gorgeous, gorgeous earthy tones, beautiful pinks and mauves and greens, and I can't say enough about it, but I'll stop talking now. I did use Hobbs batting, Aurifil thread, and Schmetz Needles as well. Thank you to them. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video that I did use my Electric Quilt 8 to design the software, to design the quilt. And the pattern I used was one I bought on Etsy from Teresa Down Under. And everything is on the screen, so you'll see that too. I do hope you give this hat a try. Maybe you have an old hat sitting around that you just want to decorate. I did buy this. I think it was like $3 or $4. It was just a cheap cotton hat. Just lots of fun. It's a great way to jazz it up and express yourself. So I really do appreciate you watching. I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I always love new subscribers. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I love doing videos. I try to do them weekly. I'm not always successful, but I try. Anyway, so if you don't mind, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. Also check me out on social media. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.